We started with a trip down memory lane. She frowned. She looked like she longed to get back to her magazine, but I sensed she also didn't want to appear rude. She fixed a smile on her face, trying to mask the effort it was costing her. Whereabouts in Yorski are you from? Not far from York, I replied. Except with none of its quaintness, I hesitated. I didn't want to tell her too much. It conspired that we had grown up about 20 miles from each other, and we chatted about our hometown for a while. I could almost see her unfurling like a flower at the beginning of spring, and as the train pulled out of the station, I found myself relaxing. The heat was less oppressive now that the train was moving, and I could at least feel the warm breeze from the open window. I closed my eyes, liking the way the air fluttered against my face. It was a few hours and a few cans of larger into the journey when she told me that both her parents were dead. Same here, I said, thinking of my mom and dad, although I didn't reveal the details. I'm the only child. They were older parents, religious. She nodded knowingly, her eyes sad, and I got the feeling there was something she wasn't telling me. What made you decide to come away? I asked. I hated my life, she replied, surprising me with her intensity. And I know the hardness of building this to her expression. It was going nowhere. No qualifications, no prospects. You didn't go to uni? She shook her head. Family circumstance, she said non-committedly. I had to get away, otherwise I'll go mad. I took a swig of larger. Same here. I finished my degree just before coming here. Signed for uni. But I was stuck in an abusive relationship with this guy. Oh, so the guy, she ran away from him. That's why she don't talk about him. Okay. Because he was beating that butt. I swung my finger into my head to indicate how much of a psycho he was. I met him when I was vulnerable. Isn't that always the way? The alcohol had made me loose-lipped. I didn't want to say too much. What about you? She shook her head, her fine hair falling onto her face. No, nobody special. I could tell she wasn't about to be drawn, so I dropped the subject. Instead, I asked her where she planned to travel, and we talked about our journey so far. We discussed our desire to island hop for a few months. By now, the sky was darkened, the strips light and buzz overhead, and the carriage was a hive of activity as seats were converted into beds. Shall we make our beds? She said, her eyes lighting up, which made me laugh. It was like a giant sleepover. There was something strangely exciting about it. I realized that the overhead compartment converted into a bed, and the seats we'd been sitting on could be laid flat, so they joined up. It's like bunk bed, she laughed. Do you want the top or bottom? Bottom, if that's okay. She nodded, appearing pleased. An orange neon curtain concealed the two of us from the rest of the carriage. This is cozy, she said, the overhead bunk creaking as she maneuvered herself into her nightwear. I pulled the long t-shirt from my backpack. It was creased and smelled damp, but I put it on anywhere, having to contrast my body in such a cramped space. I unwrapped the sheet provided from its cellophane bag. It was crisp and white and felt cool against my skin. I lay there, the sheet pulled up to my chin, trying not to be afraid of the rattling train. In the darkness, it felt like it was going too fast. I started to worry that we were going to go hurtling off the track. How safe were trains in Thailand? Are you okay? Asked a distant embodied voice from above. The currently dog said that her upside-down face was showing. Her hair splattered out in front of her. I don't think I'm going to get any sleep, do you? I'm worried we're going to derail, I admitted. Derail? Seriously? Her face had turned red where all the blood was rushing to it. I didn't think you were afraid of anything, Beth Elliott. You are this tough cookie image. I laughed. Tough cookie? Is that what you think? I saw the way you handled those blokes on the train earlier. Her eyes flashed with admiration. You're someone not to be messed with. She was right about that. Was she? Because it seemed like she was watching you on some stalker stuff. You know, I'm not one to judge, but she not to be trusted. Okay? When we disembarked from the train the next morning, this is chapter 34. When we blurry-eyed and hungry, we struck together an unspoken agreement between us. Both of us were relieved to have found a companion. Or her to found her another somebody to human traffic. Squeeze. But then again, you want to know what I was been watching on YouTube and all that. If you ain't been watching me on live, so calm that down. It's funny how quickly relations are forged when you are traveling. People who might have not have met or been interested in getting to know in your everyday life suddenly become indispensable. You sleep together, eat together, watch together, spend all day sunbathing or swimming together. And it forms a kind of intimacy that I've never had with a woman before. I didn't have many mates back home. Most girls at school had given me a wide berth thinking I was too mouthy, too weird. University was different, but having a possessive, abusive husband put paid to forming any close friendships. Most people I met couldn't believe I got married so young, and I was immediately evaluated into the old before her time category, and never invited to go out drinking or clubbing with them. Not that I would have done anyway. It wasn't worth the grief when I got home. But I escaped Sheen and my past. In my past. In Thailand, I was fun Beth, exciting Beth. I could see it in Aaron's face as I downed paint after paint in the beach bar. I went skinny dipping in the sea at night. Admiration. We were the same age, but I could tell that she looked up to me. Maybe her upbringing had been more sheltered than mine. We were like snowballs, Karen and I, collecting people as we went. So that by the time we passed through Train, Karari, and Napamat Tara Beach and arrived at Kopa Paya a few weeks later, there was a small group of us hanging out together. Emma, a statuesque redhead from Ireland with the polished skin I ever seen, Sulkin Lawrence from Finland, whose eyes were too close together, and Harry and Dylan from New Jersey. Dylan and Emma were both on a gap year before starting university. Lawrence was a few years older than me and had quit his dead-end job to go traveling. And Harry had recently finished a medical degree and was taking a 6-month break off looking for work. We partied hard, often falling to bed at 4 a.m. During the day, we swam in the clear jade waters or sunbathed on the pure white beaches. I had a bit of a crush on Harry. With his floppish blonde hair and his dimpled smile, he towered over me and Karen, and out of the three lads, he was the most charmastic. Lars was too moody, although Emma seemed to like him, and Dylan was constantly going on about the styles of women's chests in their bikinis. Karen and I agreed that we thought he was handsome, dark, curly hair, brown eyes, and a buff, tan body, but ultimately we said regretfully he was a sleaze. Dylan's tongues practically hang out every time Emma was in his outline, but she showed no interest in him, much to his disappointment. I felt safe in the crowd, despite knowing that she had no clue as to my whereabouts, that he would never have guessed I'd taken a plane to Thailand of all places. He knew I hated flying. It still sent shocks through me when I saw someone who resembled him, a tall, stocky frame, or striking blue eyes which could be as warm and inviting as the Indian Ocean one minute and as icy as the Arctic the next. Karen was the quietest of our group. She would often sit and watch us, her eyes dark by the light of the campfire as the rest of us drank and swore and sometimes snogged. I'm telling you, it's something about her I'm not liking. I wonder what went on behind Karen's large hazel eyes. Was she nursing a broken heart? She didn't seem interested in men. If anything, she seemed to want to disappear, getting irritated if anyone tried to chat her up. I attempted to find out a bit about her, but apart from revealing that her parents had died when she was young, she was closed about her life back in England. I didn't ask too many questions, and neither did she, which suited me fine. Yet, because we had spent the first week together before being joined by the others, I felt a connection to her. What would you do after this? I asked one night. It was late, and we had joined the party on the beach. She sat away from the others, clutching a can of lager, her slim legs crossed. There was a slight breeze coming off the sea, and I could smell coconut oil and sand. She shrugged. I don't want to go home. I'll quite like to go to Australia after this. Maybe work in a bar. Earn some money so that I can keep traveling. She seemed sad as she talked. What about you? Do you fancy Australia? I was touched that she might want us to travel there together. I got a place at Teacher Training College for this September, I said. Middlesex. But I'm going to defer it. I made up my mind early that day while laying on the beach. The sun on my skin, the sand in my hair. It was paradise. I didn't want it to end. She giggled. I don't blame you. Who wants to go back to depressing Great England when we have all this? She widened her arms as though encompassing the beach to see the palm trees swaying. Lawrence and Emma were running along the shoreline when the group of people I had met shrinking and darting in and out of the sea. Exactly, I replied. I'm not planning on going home, ever. Karen's the first person I ever told about my place at college. She didn't know. Middle sex was supposed to be my escape, except things escalated sooner than planned, so I fled to Thailand instead. Karen laughed, her teeth glowing white in her tan face. Still running away? She knew I escaped an abusive relationship, but I hadn't revealed anything else. So talk of it all would make it real, and here I could be in somebody else. I wondered if she felt that way too. In Thailand, we were living in the moment. We were who we decided to be that day. I suspected we were both shedding the skins of our past, like the snakes we were sometimes spotted in the long grass by a hotel. Did he hit you? Your ex? She asked, concern flashing in those big eyes. I was suddenly ashamed that I had been that woman, that person, that woman. That I put up with it for so long. That I married the bastard. He'd been charming, older, richer. Although I later found out that the money came from dogly dealing and ripping people off. But I hadn't known that at first. I'd been flattered that he'd shown an interest in me. An unhappy 15-year-old girl living alone with her father. He'd been 20 then and dapper. Driving around in his Jag with his Chucky Rolex watch, which I later found out was fake. And his wheel cut suits. He thought he was a gangster, and I was impressed. It's home war. Yes, I admitted in a small voice. He hit me. She shook her head sadly, flipping with the top of the Langer can. I know, I've only known you for a few weeks, but shit, Beth. You're the last person I imagined would fall for a guy like that. No, she's not. There isn't a type who ends up with an abusive man, I snapped, the familiar white flame of fury flickering inside me. I was shocked at her nativity. My first impression of her had been right. Prissy little bitch. It can happen to anyone. Even in the dark, I can sense her embarrassment. I'm sorry, I didn't mean... I just think that you're so feisty. I've seen the way you unleash that tongue of yours on people. Unleash? She made me sound like a monster. I wondered then if she was like a little scared of me. Maybe not scared exactly, but wary. I hope so. If she was wary, she wouldn't have kidnapped you. And sold you. So she must not be that scared. Yeah, I don't know if she did. Of course, you're right. Drop it down in the comments if you think she ain't been kidnapped. If you don't think Karen gonna kidnap, if you think Karen not gonna kidnap her, you drop it down in the comments and let me know, okay? I got my own back on him. Don't worry about it, I said, pulling my legs up to my chest. I watched the party unfold around me. Emma dancing suggestively with hers. Dylan's eyes roaming over the gyrating bodies of the women, and Harry who kept stealing glances at us. I hope it come over. Really, how? I tried to sound nonchalant. At first I gave as good as I got until I realized that to fight back would make it worse. He put me in the hospital once. She flinched. So I hit him where it hurt the most. I emptied our joint bank account and ran away. Her eyes widened. Bloody hell, Beth. I was angry with myself. I said more than I should have. I learned the hard way that to reveal too much would leave yourself open. If Sean ever found me, I had no doubt he would kill me. I changed the subject, I know. I exclaimed suddenly, making her jump so that she spelled her linger down her leg. Why don't we get a tattoo? It was only a 10-minute walk to the other end of Tonsay Village, where I was sure I seen a sign of advertising tattoos. Yet it took us much longer as Karen kept pausing the stalls, rifling through purses and shawrons. She seemed to never say no to the traders who shook jewelry or towels in her face. It began to irritate me, so every time she stopped, I huffed and sighed loudly. She threw me a apologetic smile from behind her hair, putting down whatever she picked up to try after me. She was so eager to please. Is she? She's eager to kidnap you, too. The stifling heat was making me bad-tempered, and by the time we reached the tattoo parlor, I wanted to punch someone in the face, preferably Karen. The parlor, if you could call it that, was actually a one-room shack on the edge of the village. A slim, tiny man with a scarf tied around his neck stood over a young lad with a very hairy back, etching a heart into the skin of his shoulder blade. Karen pawed. Do you think it's safe? She whispered in my ear, taking a scraggy-looking dog with one leg missing that had flopped to the floor in the heat, and the man's dusty gray t-shirt with a sweat patch and the shape of a mouth drawn down his back. She shot a fearful glance, gazed at the image of various tattoos slapped on makeshift walls. It would be fine, I assured her, although I had misgivings. When the hairy black man vacated his chair, Karen stepped forward, brushing the hair from her face. I noticed a sheen of sweat above her top lip. Tattoo please, she said as her voice rasped between her dry lips. After a bit of haggling, we agreed on a very cheap price. The man gestured to the pictures on the wall and asked us to choose the design. Karen stared at him, her brow furrowed. I don't know, I can't decide. Oh, for fuck's sakes, I said irritably. I'll go first. Karen stared at me with round eyes. Oh, okay, sure. She fumbled in her bag with her water bottle and took a large swig. I sidestepped her. I made up my mind before he even arrived. I knew exactly what I wanted. A winged bird and flight, freedom. I made myself as comfortable as I could on a hard stool and pointed to my arm. Right here, please. An hour later, my new tattoos scabbing over and throbbing, I was leaning on Karen as we ambled back to the hotel. Our flip-flops smacking against the dusty ground. By the time we reached our resort, we were both sweating in our shorts and t-shirt. One of the scabs had opened up and little goblets of blood had collected around its edges. I sat on the bed in the room we shared and dabbed at it half-heartedly with a wet wab of tissue. I feel such a wuss, said Karen, slumping onto the bed opposite. She had bailed at the last minute, as I knew she would. Every time the needle touched my skin, she blanched. At one point, I thought she might pass out. And so you should, I chided. I thought she was tougher than that, Karen Fisher. And the Yorker last too? I'm disappointed. I was half joking, but she looked stricken. In that moment, I could tell she thought she failed me. That she was less a person in my eyes, a coward. For once in my shitty life, I was the one in the relationship where I held all the power and the feeling was intoxicating. The next day, Karen disappeared. What y'all thinking about that? Karen just disappeared? Mm-hmm. And then you get kidnapped and you end up in the bathroom. Getting fucked at all your hoes. Drop that down in the comments if you think I went too far. I apologize if you did. It was unusual for her to go off without telling me where she was heading. I wandered down to the beach with the others, hoping to catch her, but she was nowhere to be seen. Where's Karen? Asked Harry. He was hunched over his snorkel, adjusting the straps, his legs stretched out, long and tanned beneath his shorts. I couldn't take my eyes off them. I shrugged, slapping sunscreen into my arms. I hoped Harry would offer to do my back, but he seemed distracted. I have no idea. She left before I woke up this morning. Do you think she's moved on? Without us? He sounded worried, and I once asked why he cared so much. I don't think so. Her stuff was still in our room. That's good. I like Karen, he said matter-of-factly, slapping the snorkel over his head. Then he jumped up and sprinted into the sea. I watched as his light body dived in between the waters, my stomach curling with jealousy. An hour later, Karen was back. She walked across the beach gracefully, a new red sorrel tied around her waist. A beach bag slung over her shoulder. She waved at me. She was beaming. It was only as she got closer that I noticed the tattoo. I can read a little of this one as we get closer to the end. Chapter 25. It pleased me. That tattoo, what it signified. I reached the ripe old age of 21 and never experienced what it felt like to have a best friend. Getting married young to a possessive man will do that to you. Shane always said he was my best friend. He hadn't wanted me to go to university and tried to make me give it up. He was terrified I'd meet someone on my course. But I refused to leave. He couldn't make too much of a fuss. What with the lecturers and the university counselor hanging around, he was a coward underneath it all, as bullies usually are. Harry was the first man I fantasized since Sheen. He was everything Sheen wasn't. Self-effacing, clever, soft-spoken, his New Jersey accent warm and friendly, his body graceful like a ballet dancer's. Sheen was so cocky, a working-class man who made good, a phrase he relied on out often. Barched with his gold jewelry and handmade suits. As the weeks had turned into months, our little group, Emma, Lars, Dylan, Harry, Karen, and me had become like a family. I could have told Karen how I felt about Harry, of course, but that wasn't the type of friendship we had. We didn't open up to each other about our feelings. She was like me in that way, closed and particular. We might have felt deeply about things, but we didn't like to show it, as if midnight emotions made us weak. We were both used in different ways to hide our feelings from the ones closest to us. After the conversation on the beach, I watched to see if anything was developing between Harry and Karen. I began to notice little things. Like how they would always end up sunbathing next to each other on the beach, approached her at the bar together. If he wants to go to the village, he always asked her to walk with him. He laughed at her. He laughed a lot at her. Quite honestly, crap. Jokes and seemed to find her witty. He told her once, while I was in earshot, that she had a dry sense of humor, which she loved. That comment pissed me off for days. Her behavior changed too. Sitting a little bit too close while sipping their cocktails so their knees touch. Flipping back her hair, raking her fingers through it, and curling it demurely behind her ear as she talked to him, head to one side. Ooh, she liked him too. One evening, we had trekked in masses through the village and up the steep incline to watch the sunset over the two bays of Paya. As we navigated the narrow, twisting path, I had to keep stopping to take a swig from my water bottle. The air was humid, my tank top clinging to my skin, my trainers rubbing my feet. I was stuck at the back of the group with Dylan, who had his earphones on. I had noticed that everyone had paired up, Emma and Lars, Karen and Harry, which left me with Dylan. I wasn't his type at all. No booze wasn't big enough for a star, and he paid me no attention, which was fine by me. I think he and Harry had only started traveling together because they both came from New Jersey, but they were so different. Emma and Lars were holding hands as he helped her up the rickety pathway, and I glanced at Karen and Henry ahead. They were laughing, turning to chat with Emma and Lars, and I had a hard paranoid thought of them becoming a foursome. I wasn't interested, neither was Dylan, in making the six. So where did I leave us? Some of our group was becoming more coupley, and it left a nasty taste in my mouth. I watched the damn water. The views from the top were breathtaking. We sat on the flat, warm rocks to watch the sun going down behind the bays. The two crabs of sand reminded me of butterfly wings. The sun looked like a huge orange ball, staining the sky pink and red and reflecting in the shimmery sky. We all felt silent as we watched. Karen leaned her head on Henry's shoulder, then, as if remembering she was in company, sat up straight again, tossing her long hair back. But I noticed the intimacy, the friendship of electricity that passed between them. "Isn't it stunning?" said Henry. Karen was sitting between us, and I longed to push her out of the way. What was it about her he liked? We wanted this dissimilar. Both brunettes, although hers was more mostly than mine. Both short, both lean. Okay, she did have a pretty face, while mine was more masculine and more angular. But still, I could look attractive when I made an effort. I lit a cigarette and saw Karen's eyes flash. She didn't approve of me smoking. I leaned across her and offered one to Harry, who took it gracefully. And I threw Karen a triumph look. "A doctor who smokes?" she said disapprovingly, staring straight ahead. "Very encourageous of you." "Ooh, encourageous," mocked Dylan next to me. "Have you swallowed the dictionary by any chance, Karen?" I nudged him in the ribs hard, enjoying his groan of pain. "Grow up," I hissed. He was like the annoying little brother I never wanted. We walked back down the hill, me silent, Broad and the other giggling and stumbling as we navigated the rocky pathways in the dust. The smell of smoke drifted toward us from a nearby bonfire. A group of locals sat around the hut, colorful laundry blowing in the faint breeze from a makeshift line. Dylan struck up conversation with me about that night's activity, which included getting hammered in the bar. "I can't wait to get a couple of paints down me," I said with feeling. I was planning on getting wasted. "You're a bit of a hard nut," laughed Emma, and her soft Irish accent. "You can drink me on the table, not saying something." "I'm not a big drinker, really," said Karen with regret, grabbing hold of Henry's arm as she stumbled over a rock. Emma laughed. "I've never seen you piss, Karen." "She's too much of a control freak," I offered for Henry's benefit, "and she doesn't smoke." "I had a girlfriend in medical school who used to get wasted every weekend," said Harry. He was the type of voice that people automatically listen to, strong and confident, as if he'd grown up with parents who were interested in everything he had to say. She'd be nearly comatose after puking up everywhere. It wasn't very attractive in the end, not to mention what she was doing to her liver, binge drinking like that. "Not very attractive," teased Emma, "but it's all right for men to get off their faces, and it's all right for you to smoke and fuck your lungs up," laughed Karen, prodding him good-naturedly in the side. "But at least your liver's pristine." "Well, yes, that's different." He tickled her, and she fell against him, giggling. "But it's not very much attractive whoever gets all of their faces," added Harry mildly, throwing an arm casually over Karen's shoulder. not to the extent where you're incoherent, talking shit and puking everywhere. And she was like that every weekend. It just got embarrassing. Okay, once again, here we go. Finishing up a chapter, let me know. Finishing up a chapter, let you go. It was easy to spike her drink. It didn't take much. Just the Benos I picked up in Bandock. It is amazing what you can buy over the counter at the premises there. I gone in for Diaper Pam to help to help me block out the nightmares I had about Shane tracking me down. But when I saw the rows of little blue and white and yellow pills lined up in jars on one shelf like sweets, I knew I had to make the most of it. So I bought some of each. That evening, I mixed all of them together to make a fine powder. Later, we were all standing with our backs to the bar, chattering, and I positioned myself next to Karen. Her cocktail was behind her, and she turned every now and then to take a sip. She usually spent all night harboring 2 pints of lager. I only ever seen her a little tipsy. It was easy to tip the powder into her drink while she was flirting with Harry. It didn't take long for all of those drugs to get into her system. It started with the dancing, something Karen never did. She told me once she was uncoordinated. She was right about that. Despite having a body like a dancer, she moved like an elephant. Unwitting and intelligent. Knocking into people. Her clumsiness astonished me. Dancing was something that came naturally to me. I made sure I was next to her and Harry, remembering some of the moves from a salsa class I was taking with Shane. Before he got jealous when the dance teacher used me as an example and insisted we stop going. I got already next to Karen. I got already next to Harry as he did a sort of a shuffle, looking embarrassed as Karen flung herself around. Arms falling over her head, her usual inhibitions forgotten. This isn't IB's love, one bloke called to her when she stumbled into him. Standing on his leather-thorn foot, I heard him under his breast, bloody druggies. I could see the shade of humiliation in Harry's eyes. Eventually, he took her arm, telling her that she had enough and should get some water. I followed them, pleased to know how sweaty and unattractive she looked, stumbling and crunching under him as though she would fall if left to her own devices. Harry led her back to the bar for a glass of water, which she made her down, concern etched on his face. Wow, I said unnecessarily. I never seen Karen so pissed. It must be the heat. She needs to help keep her fluid intake up. I feel dreadful, she groaned, still leaning heavily against Harry. Then her body convulsed and she threw up everywhere. I jumped back in alarm as it splattered to the floor, but Harry held onto her, calmly rubbing her back and holding her hair out of her face. Karen was like a rag doll straggling between us, each of her arms around one of our necks as we half carried, half dragged her to our bungalow. We laid her down carefully on her bed, but now she was out of it, mumbling incoherently to herself, her eyes closed, a sheen of sweat covering her face like cling film. She had vomited down the front of her dress. We had ridden up, exposing her knickers. Harry knelt on a cold towel, straightening her dress and mopping her brow with a wet towel he had gathered from the bathroom. You need to keep it cool. Make sure she drinks fluids and turn her over onto her side if she gets sick again. I felt a flicker of panic as he got up. Where are you going? I imagined us spending the night together, playing doctor and nurse to Karen, having intimate chats over her prostrate body. He frowns. I'm going back to the bar, he said as if it was a stupid question. You leaving Karen with me? He looked doubtful. Well, I thought she might be embarrassed if she knew I seen her like this. And you're her closest friend here. Closest friend, I liked it. He came up to where I was sitting on the edge of the bed. He towered above me. I suddenly overwhelmed urge to part his cargo shorts down and make him forget all about Karen Bloody Fisher. He leaned over and squeezed my shoulder. You're a good friend, he said. Let me know if she takes a turn for the worse, though. Hopefully she'll sleep it off. She did take a turn for the worse. I made sure of it. Okay.